Marcus Carter sat calmly in seat 2A, a picture of stillness in a storm. Standing over him was Nicole Harris, a senior flight attendant, her face a mask of smug authority. To her side stood a nervous security officer named Linda, and the stern, unmoving figure of Captain Daniel Pierce. They were a wall of uniforms and rules, but in the aisle, a different kind of wall had formed. A wall of people, passengers, their faces a mix of outrage and shock, stood holding their phones up, recording every second, a soft human barrier protecting the man in the simple clothes. The hushed, angry murmur of the cabin was suddenly sliced by the captain's voice, sharp and final. He spoke not to the crowd, but directly to Marcus. "Sir, this is your final warning," Captain Pierce announced. "For the last time, either vacate the seat, or you will be physically removed from this aircraft." Marcus Carter didn't look at the captain. He didn't look at Nicole's triumphant smirk or Linda's uneasy stance. He simply looked down at his phone, his expression impossible to read. In a low, clear voice that cut through the tension, he spoke into his earpiece. "Rachel," he said, "they're making their final move. Confirm board status." Nicole, hearing this, muttered to the captain, "Just get him out of here." The security officer, Linda, took a hesitant step forward, her hand reaching for Marcus's arm. What she and the entire crew didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, is that Marcus wasn't just a passenger, he was the CEO and a primary owner of the airline they worked for. And the call he had just made had already sealed their fate. But to understand how he ended up in that desperate moment, we need to go back just 20 minutes earlier, to a world that existed before the storm. The crew lounge at Chicago O'Hare was buzzing with the usual pre-flight energy. It was a place of hierarchies, of inside jokes, and unspoken rules. And at the very bottom of this ladder was Mia Lang. At 22 years old, this was her first solo assignment, the day she would finally earn her wings. Her hands trembled just slightly as she meticulously adjusted her trainee name badge. She was focused, reviewing checklists on her tablet, trying to project a confidence she didn't quite feel. Across the room, by the coffee machine, senior flight attendants Nicole Harris and Brian Foster were laughing. They were loud and confident, the undisputed rulers of this small kingdom. They barely gave Mia a glance. As Nicole passed by on her way out, she offered a piece of unsolicited, cutting advice. "Try not to spill anything on the VIPs, newbie," she said, not even bothering to make eye contact. "First class isn't the minor leagues." Mia felt a familiar sting of smallness, but she pushed it down. This was her dream, and she wouldn't let a little arrogance ruin it. She took a deep breath, straightened her uniform, and walked toward the gate, ready to do her job. She was positioned at the entrance to the jet bridge, her smile nervous but genuine as she greeted each passenger. The boarding process was a steady rhythm of beeps and welcomes. Then, a man named Marcus Carter walked on. He was calm, dressed in plain jeans and a black t-shirt, and he blended into the crowd, completely unnoticed. Mia took his boarding pass and scanned it. Her tablet screen flashed a bright, definitive green. The details were clear. Carter, Marcus, seat 2A. She gave him a polite nod and a quiet, "Welcome aboard." He smiled back, a warm, simple gesture, and continued down the jet bridge. A few minutes later, from her post near the galley, Mia watched as Nicole intercepted that same man. She saw Nicole look him up and down, a flicker of disdain in her eyes. And then she heard Nicole's voice, flat and dismissive. "Sir, I think you're in the wrong cabin." Mia's brow furrowed. That couldn't be right. She had seen the scan with her own eyes. It was a valid first-class ticket. But as she watched Nicole refuse to even glance at the boarding pass Marcus offered, a cold feeling settled in her stomach. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. This was a judgment. It was a decision made not based on a ticket, but on the clothes a man wore. And Mia was the only one who knew for sure that the crew was already wrong. The confrontation grew uglier, fast. Marcus remained perfectly calm, which seemed to only anger Nicole more. Her smug colleague Brian soon joined her, chuckling as he suggested, "Yeah, man, you sure you're in the right place? Looks like economy is more your style." Captain Pierce was summoned from the cockpit, and without asking for details, he sided with his crew, his voice firm and unyielding. They told Marcus his seat had been reassigned, a lie that hung in the air like poison. Mia watched from the galley, her heart pounding against her ribs. She saw Marcus hold out his boarding pass and his ID, and she saw Nicole wave them away as if they were trash. Then came the moment that broke something inside her. With a flourish of theatrical irritation, Nicole took Marcus's valid boarding pass and tore it straight down the middle. The sound of the ripping paper was quiet, but to Mia, it was as loud as a gunshot. That was her breaking point. This was no longer about policy. It was about cruelty. In that moment, Mia Lang made a choice. It was a choice that could end her career before it had even begun. While the senior crew was focused on their target, she subtly pulled her phone from her jacket pocket. Her fingers, slick with nervous sweat, found the voice memo app and pressed record. She slipped the phone back into her pocket, the tiny red light a secret beacon of truth in the darkening cabin. Recording fellow crew members was a fire-able offense. Defying a senior attendant on her very first day was unthinkable, but watching them destroy a man's dignity for no reason, that was unbearable. She tried to intervene, her voice small and shaky. Actually, she began, stepping forward, I think his ticket's real. I saw it scan green. Nicole spun on her, her eyes blazing. Stay out of this, Mia, she snapped, her voice dripping with venom. Trainees don't speak during an escalation. Humiliated, Maya stepped back, retreating to the perceived safety of the galley. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear. Just stay quiet, one part of her screamed. You have a family. You need this job. Don't throw it all away for a stranger. She felt a wave of panic, the urge to delete the recording and pretend she had seen nothing. But then she overheard them. Nicole and Brian, huddled together, were laughing. He probably printed that boarding pass at home, Brian snickered. Nicole added, her voice laced with mockery, Not in those jeans, honey. And that was it. The last of Mia's fear burned away, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. This wasn't just a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was malicious. It was wrong on a level that had nothing to do with airline policy and everything to do with basic human decency. She looked down at her phone, still secretly recording in her pocket. She had made a choice. She would not be a bystander. She would be a witness. Her personal sacrifice was now calculated. She knew exactly what she would lose by doing this, her job, her dream, and she chose to do it anyway. The proof she was gathering, along with the videos from the other passengers, would become the undeniable evidence that would bring the entire situation to a head, leading directly back to that tense, explosive standoff. We are back in the moment. The captain is given his final warning. The security officer, Linda, is reaching for Marcus. But before her fingers can touch his arm, Marcus holds up a hand, not an aggression, but as a quiet signal to stop. He looks past the crew, making eye contact with the passengers who are standing for him, and then he looks at Mia, who is standing frozen by the galley. Then he speaks. His voice isn't loud, but it lands with the force of a thunderclap, cutting through every other sound in the cabin. I am Marcus Carter, he says, CEO and 25% shareholder of Horizon Airlines. The world stopped. The air went completely still. Nicole's mouth dropped open, the smugness on her face dissolving into pure, horrifying shock. Brian staggered back a step, all the color draining from his face. Captain Pierce looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. You're lying, Brian stuttered, but the words had no conviction. Marcus didn't flinch. He simply tapped his phone. Rachel, he said, patching James on speaker. A second later, a new voice filled the cabin, calm, clear, and dripping with authority. This is James Thompson, Horizon board member, the voice from the phone announced. We have received full recordings from Marcus Carter and a staff member, Mia Lang. This situation is being handled internally. Any Horizon employee who attempts to interfere further will be terminated, effective immediately. Linda snatched her hand back as if she'd touched a hot stove. The game was over. The re-encounter was complete. The man they saw as a nobody was now revealed to be, quite literally, everybody. He was the one who signed their paychecks. With his identity established, Marcus stood. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. He calmly and systematically dismantled them with their own actions. He turned first to Nicole. "You didn't see a passenger," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "You saw a stereotype. You chose to ignore my ID. You chose to tear up my boarding pass. You chose to lie and alter the passenger log. And then," he added, his gaze flicking toward the galley, "you laughed about it." He addressed the captain and Brian, outlining every failure, every broken rule, every missed chance to do the right thing. Then he made the announcement. "You are all relieved of duty, permanently," he stated. "You will be escorted off this aircraft immediately." He thanked the passengers who had filmed and spoken up, promising them that their courage would not be forgotten. Then he turned his attention to Mia. She stood frozen, still clutching her phone like a lifeline. He walked over to her, his expression softening. "You showed more integrity in one day than some people show in their entire careers," he said gently. "You're getting a promotion, effective immediately. We need more people like you at Horizon." Mia looked up at him, her eyes brimming with tears of shock and relief. A promotion! It was more than she could have ever imagined. But in that moment, as she looked at the powerful man in front of her, she realized this was bigger than just her. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," she said, her voice shaking but finding a new strength. "But a promotion is just for me. What about the next person? Can we use this to change the training? To make sure every single employee knows that respect isn't based on a seat number or a suit?" This was her true request. Not a reward for herself, but a solution for everyone. She wasn't just asking for a new title. She was asking for a new culture. Marcus looked at her, and a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. He was deeply and profoundly impressed. He had come here to find a problem. He had just found the solution. Weeks later, in a bright, modern training facility, a new class of Horizon Airlines recruits sat watching a video. The program was called the Mia Lang Integrity Initiative. On the screen, Mia, now a confident and poised training lead, was speaking. "Dignity is non-negotiable," she said to the camera. "It's our first and most important point of contact. It doesn't matter what someone is wearing or what seat they're in. Our job is to see the person." In the back of the room, Linda, the former security officer, sat watching attentively, a notebook open on her lap. She was part of the first class to go through the new training, a quiet testament to the power of a second chance. And far away, in a corner office overlooking a busy city, Marcus Carter sat at his desk. He wasn't looking at spreadsheets or profit margins. He was looking at a live feed of customer comments scrolling on a large monitor, comments filled with words like respectful, kind, and professional. An email popped up on his screen. The subject line read, "Incident reports, 90 days post B-14. He clicked it open. The report was empty. There were no incidents to report. He leaned back in his chair and allowed himself a quiet, satisfied smile. It was never about one flight, one seat, or one arrogant crew. It was about changing the very heart of the company he had built. A single act of courage from a young trainee who was willing to risk everything for what was right had not just corrected a single wrong. It had started a ripple of goodness that washed through an entire organization, rebuilding a culture from the inside out. It was a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest changes don't come from the top down, but from the quiet, unwavering integrity of a single good person.